本当？見えないでしょ？どこにいるのかな？見えないよ。
I miss you.
What's good, Internet? It's Monday, January 11th, and you are listening to Waypoint Radio, episode 370. I'm your host, Austin Walker, and today I am joined by Gita Jackson.
Hello.
Patrick Klepek.
Write it on your heart that every day is the best day in the year.
Okay.
Ralph.
Is that the quote
Waldo
today?
Emerson.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And Ricardo Contreras, who probably doesn't have a special Waldo Emerson quote.
No.
Now that's what we're bringing to the table today.
Well,
Everyone bring your fave quote.
Was that Walden? Where's...
No.
Shit.
Was
Who's
it?
that?
Maybe it was. I thought you were asking if that quote was from Walden. Yes. No.
Henry Thoreau.
No.
Shit.
Henry,
Fuck.
yeah,
Waldo threw me off.
Emerson.
Walden. I should know.
Yeah,
My
sorry.
mom made me walk around that entire goddamn pond as a child. So I've got that burned into my brain.
Did you have any sort of transcendental experiences? Any
No!
deep connections with nature? Did the self fall away? No?
I was 14. I was just like, Mom, can we go home?
Sure. That's fair. You know what? That's fair. How's everyone doing today? How was everyone's weekend? Did everyone feel all right going into this week? Do you think this week's going to be a nightmare?
The Bears lost a playoff game. Feels normal. I turned it off.
Wow.
It was like midway through the third quarter, and my daughter was like, "Could we?" She gives no shits about the Nickelodeon slime cannons, as great as those were. You could, for people who aren't aware, you could watch the Bears Saints playoff game on Nickelodeon, commented by children and one I think ex-NFL player. And when they would score a touchdown, which the Bears did not do until the final second of the game, so they did get slimed as the game finished. But slime cannons went off in the end zone. They should do more stuff like that. It was neat. That's what I have to say about
sounds really
the Bears
adorable.
losing by 20 plus points, is that the slime cannons were neat. So
Yeah, well.
The best thing Nickelodeon ever did, I think, was try to make a version of adult culture that made for children, that made children feel respected and like their interests were okay. It was okay to be a child and into sports, not something for grown up people. Like, remember Nick News when you were a child? Where they would just like literally explain like current world events. The first time I learned about sanctions were from Nick News.
That's wild.
I remember. Oh wow, Nick News. I've not. My brain just like
Yeah.
just like did a thing.
This is part of your
Nick
brain
News.
activated. Yeah.
It's not sure what it's remembering. It just knows there's something that'll unlock like 20 minutes from now when that part of my brain
Linda
is
Ellerby,
accessed.
right? Linda Ellerby. That's
Oh,
the
yeah,
name
Linda
that comes
Ellerby.
to mind, and I don't know. I'm so sure Linda Ellerby was someone before that to people who were not 7 or whatever. But to me, I was like, yeah, the Nick News lady.
Nick News and Channel 1. That was like big for me in middle school.
Yep. I remember those two things.
Yeah, well, Patrick, I'm sorry the Bears lost. I'm
not.
Okay,
Nope,
you're
they're
just
gonna fire
glad to
people.
be
I'm
out.
pumped about it.
Okay.
I also believe, to put a pin on it, is that Mr. Trubisky it seems like a very nice boy, but just dog shit bad quarterback. He got the NDP, the Nick like valuable. He like got an award. They gave him an award. He got voted by the audience, despite being quite clearly the
very
worst player
funny.
on the field. And it's not like, like the best Chicago Bear because he's the quarterback and like the player that the kids see the most often. No, like they gave him an award. It was
That's
great.
so funny.
Someone added it to his Wikipedia page already.
A shout out really quick,
Beautiful.
speaking of football, to my dad, who's Cleveland Browns.
Oh,
had
Browns.
a long and difficult road to this.
I turned that game on like 10 minutes in. I was like, what the fuck?
An
I
incredible.
like opened the timeline on a whim, and it just was everyone was just posting, oh my god, and then I realized that football chaos must be occurring.
Yeah, it's
Chaos
like, well,
occurred.
like given the last week, like the timeline going, oh my god, could unfortunately mean
Yeah.
a lot of things. And
Yeah, this time it was a sporting event, so thank goodness for that.
28 points in the first quarter, which I want to say ties for the most postseason, or maybe it's the most.
I
most
think it was
points ever in a wild card
postseason
game.
or even like a regular season game to I think they may have tied the multiple points in a first quarter.
It's
period.
incredible. 28 points in the first quarter is absurd.
And then still managed to make you sweat it in like the third. Like I kept wanting to turn the game off and like just texted I went to family from that area and I was like, you did it. Now you just get to like, I don't know, drink for 3 quarters. Like what do you do? And then I check over and it's like, they're pulling within 10 points. And please don't do this. My heartbreak. I gave up on the Bears, but now I am a Browns fan, and this would break my heart if they somehow managed to lose. Yet it would be incredibly appropriate for the franchise to have done exactly that.
After 2020, I feel like we all deserve for the Browns to win the Super Bowl because they're such a big underdog. Like
go be Patrick Mahomes. He's going to be in the Super Bowl 9,000 more times. Yeah. So you know what? Just if they can beat him next week, that would be. I mean, to be fair though, that was their Super Bowl. Their Super Bowl was
right.
Same with the Bears were always bad. If you just beat the Packers, it's like great. We won the Super Bowl this year, despite the fact that we are terrible. The Browns beating the Steelers and really like potentially sending. Like, you know, incredibly accused sexual assaulter to retirement. That's great.
Ben Roethlisberger. Anyway, that's football weekend. We're now out of football weekend. What else? Anyone else up to anything? Anyone play anything? Anyone want to talk about a game? Anyone want to? What's going on out there?
Well, I played a game I didn't enjoy, but a game I thought was interesting.
Oh. I'm on a journey.
Some of us have played Reigns, right?
Yeah,
that game where it's like Tinder.
That game where it's like Tinder,
and it's like you're a medieval king, and you've got a deck of cards, and like you have to make choices, and you make those choices by swiping one direction or the other way.
Yeah.
And there's like a fun meta narrative where it's like, oh, you retain your consciousness between each like lifetime, and you're trying to see how long your king can live. It's like, it's cute.
Yeah.
Well, they made a new one of those.
Okay. Are you a
They made a bunch
still?
of those, right? Like we should be like they made like a Game of Thrones one.
Yeah,
they've made a number of these games after Reigns was like kind of like a surprise hit, and then it was like not a game that you would have thought is going to become like a franchise.
As far as I know, there's like a couple of branded ones, including Game of Thrones, and then there's Reigns and an official Reigns sequel.
Her Majesty is the sequel, right? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Her Majesty and the Game of Thrones one I know had Lee Alexander on writing for them. And I checked this new one and I didn't see her name. And this is the one called Reigns Beyond. It's out on Apple Arcade, which is maybe why nobody knows this exists.
Sure.
And this one is set in space, and I think that they've absolutely found the hard limit of what this game engine can do, baby. Because it doesn't really work at all.
Okay, so like
it's interesting though, because like the Reigns experience is so stratified. It's like it plays in this very particular way. You have like 4 resources you can need to organize, and like each decision will change like how much of that resource you have. It's very, very, very standard.
Yeah, like the way that Reigns works.
You play one Reigns game.
Is that like you have a score for like faith, military, money, and like the people, how much the people like you. And if any of those things gets to 0 or too high, I would say it was like 20, then you fail. And so it's like this game of like making binary choices to try to keep those things in balance while also setting up plot events so that you can kind of go down different plot routes. And that's hard to do because those plot routes can really jack up your score in one direction or another one when you start to like, you know, talk to a demon or try to help too many people because they're starving. And then suddenly the people realize that, you know, they have all the power, not you, and you're not a fucking king anymore or whatever. So like, I don't even know how to begin to translate that into what looks like a Star Trek situation.
Yeah, it's the fact that it feels like Star Trek is like the first sign where I feel like they didn't actually know what like outer space pastiche they wanted to fall into, right? Mm-hmm. Because Reigns already, before they did the Brandon Game of Thrones like version of the game, it already felt like it was drawing specifically on Game of Thrones, where you are a king making choices about their kingdom, and that's such a defined setup that everything else about the game feels designed to fit within those parameters. Now, here in a spaceship, so what happens is you're the captain of a spaceship, and when you are doing the card flipping thing, that's when you're commanding the ship, when you're flying from location to location. And you have to control like the oxygen, the hull, the mood of the people on board, and the power. And like again, like immediately because those resources aren't as varied or like metaphysical as the ones in the original Reigns, it feels like some of these choices are like very, 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 very arbitrary. You know, like you know, in the original Reigns, sometimes you get choices like, oh, women want to wear like mini skirts, but that's going to make the church upset. And you find interesting ways for each resources to be affected by another one. Here, it just really feels like the game is just making shit up because it's forced into this form that it cannot necessarily sustain. And this is like even more defined when you realize that the entirety of the game in the original Range is flipping those cards. Like that's all of the game that you play. Here, that's still true, except now no, it's not actually still true. Now you're in a rock band and you do rhythm game sections.
What? I thought you...
Yeah, man. Like, it doesn't work out in the way. Like the first time you do it, it's thrilling. You're like, wow, I didn't realize that. Like the visual effect that they should have, the sort of the frame of the card expands and suddenly you have this guitar. But the thing is, I play phone games while me and David are watching TV, so it was on mute. So I don't know what that song sounds like, and I doubt I ever will. And like, too, it's just like, that's, I mean.
What's the rhythm mechanic? Like, are you tapping? Are you?
It's just, you're just like putting your finger on the screen and you have to like catch notes as on a track. It's like not very involved, so it doesn't feel very significant. I would get, 100% perfects on songs after the first time I played them, and I just felt like, okay, this feels like a weird throwaway now. But also, like, most of the game is not, in fact, focused on you making those binary choices that made the gameplay so interesting, because sometimes you would be forced to make a choice you didn't like because otherwise everything would collapse. You are only in that ship when you're flying from planet to planet, and you will have to, like, land on planets. And then, like, the card flipping mechanic, it doesn't really work anymore, like, because you have to go to different locations. And so it just becomes like a normal-ass game. And it's just like, I don't know why, if you wanted to make this game, you used this particular, like, this form, these formal qualities, these mechanics that had worked so well for such a defined thing.
Right.
Like, it feels very undercooked. It also was buggy, weirdly buggy. For a game where you're just flipping cards. But
I like so many weird questions about how this thing works, which is like,
please lay them on me.
Okay, so you still have those 4 scores, the like you said, hull and oxygen and morale and fuel. Is there still a fail state if you get those maxed out, or do those just cap in this versus in?
There is, but what happens is much, much, much less satisfying.
Okay.
Is that there's the fiction in the original Reigns is that you die and then you are rejoining a new king,
right,
as they've ascended to the throne. You know,
totally. But you're like an immortal spirit tied to your bloodline, or something like that. Yeah,
it has like a very mystical vibe, and it makes each death feel very significant, even if you just you made 2 choices and you got eaten by lions or whatever. Here you're just a clone, and the game will just set you back at the beginning of the space flight trip at the last planet you are on. And so there's no meta narrative there, and it feels very much like all those deaths feel very meaningless.
Well, and that also shifts the type of game it is in a real way, right? Because then now it's not, and maybe Her Majesty did this, or the Game of Thrones one did this, and I just didn't play those. I only played the first one. But that means that, like, you're always making forward progress. I mean, you were always sort of making forward progress in that game in the meta narrative, but like you started each run over. It was still a run based game in a real way, whereas this does not sound like that. And like, good on them for wanting to branch out and try to do a more traditional, like, whatever, like adventure game or visual novel style thing. But like, that's a surprise. That's a pretty big change for sure.
Yeah, and I think Reigns and most card game, like deck of card game based games, they really fit like mechanically and formally in a game that is run based, right? Because deck of cards are random. There's all these things we do with decks of cards that we shuffle them. We create new opportunities by putting new cards next to each other. And here, it's just, okay, you see the same prompts over and over and over, and then you just figure out how to game them and like how to win.
So if you,
and like that is so much less.
If you leave a planet and then you die 3 things ahead, then you start the planet over. Are you getting the same events as you leave that planet again? Like, is it?
No, those are still random, but you're doing those events so often that it doesn't. Like, I felt like with Reigns, because you could at least feel like, oh, this king has a different personality than the one before. You could, if you saw events over again, you would feel like you would have an opportunity to approach them differently. Here, it feels like there's now like a very binary wrong and right answer because you have a specific goal of at least getting to the next planet. So you end up just doing whatever is the most mercenary thing to do. And you get a lot less of the interesting fiction of finding out new plot lines. And like, there are some secrets in this game. I got one of the endings. But it feels so much more goal oriented. I mean, I guess that's how the difference between some people use Tinder and some other people use Tinder, right? Some people go to Tinder and are very goal oriented. They're like, I want to have sex today. And other people use Tinder and they're like, I just want to see what the people are like. And I've always been one of the latter. Yeah. But it feels like a pretty rote and simple game now instead of an expansive and limitless one. And it really just has to do with the framing, which is really, it's interesting because it's essentially the same game, but these very minor changes have made me like it a lot less. And
you would think that going to space and the kind of openness of science fiction would make it feel, in fact, less limited in some ways and more out there and open up the possibility space more. But to hear that it's restrictive is a bummer for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably pick it up again when it's like I got an ending and I really felt I've got my fill of this, which is not how I felt with the original Reigns. Original Reigns just was fun to keep going and see what else you could find. Here, I feel like even if I haven't found everything, I know what the game can do, and I'm done with it.
Yeah, if it was not on Apple Arcade, I would consider it, but I'm not going to pick up Apple Arcade just for this at this point, honestly.
Fair enough.
You know, sorry to Apple Arcade.
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
I literally have it just because I keep forgetting to cancel it.
Speaking of science fiction narrative deep dives, Patrick, I've seen you tweeting about Aegis Rim 13, about Yakisoba.
Yakisoba Pan.
Yakisoba Pan, yeah.
I love Yakisoba.
I don't know what that is, but there's a character in this game that...
Oh, shit, what?
Have you not had the scene where they explain what Yakisoba Pan is?
Maybe I did. Like, I played like a couple hours this to begin with and then picked it up for real this week, so maybe I missed that part. I don't know.
Yakisoba Pan?
Is that a question?
What is that?
It's yakisoba in a hot dog
bread,
bun,
right?
Yeah, in pan, yeah, in a bun, yeah. It is one of the favorite foods of a character in Aegis Rim 13 Sentinels or 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim.
I think that's
I always
right.
get this name backwards. Yeah, 13 Sentinels Aegis
Rim. So a
Rim.
major plot point of this game is a fucking spaghetti sandwich is what you're fucking telling me.
Yeah, shit looks good though. Look it up. That shit looks all right.
It does sound amazing.
And you know, and the art in this game is tremendous. So it's, you know, even in its 2D hand drawn form is, you know, I don't know how misrepresentative or representative of the real life sandwich it is, but you know, the character's enthusiasm for it is infectious. It makes me want to seek this out.
This is real.
The sandwich?
Well, the real as in like other people do it and not this is a weird quirk of this character.
No, it's specifically as a character who is blown away by it because where he's from doesn't have it.
I see, but
that's
right.
Okay, I'm not gonna like dance or like okay, like if you don't want to know anything about the premise of like 13 Sentinels,
this game has been out for months and months now.
Yeah, skip ahead. But like a lot of the game involves some forms of like they call it time shifting, but where you have characters that were living in the 40s and then suddenly find themselves in the 80s or vice versa. And so like you'll have them experiencing things they couldn't have experienced because they'd either be old or dead, and so that becomes part of the like the arcs of the various characters is them finding themselves in different timelines and having to mess with it. Yeah, so like there's two things I think are interesting about this game. One is the way I'm playing it, and then two is the game itself. The way I'm playing it is it's gorgeous. I bet it looks amazing on a big TV. I played like the first hour of it when I was putting together a feature last year. Is Austin just pasting these?
That's not
Gita
me.
is just pasting these sandwiches.
Just so we all have. I want.
Yeah, now
Is our
I'm
group
into
chat. I was
it.
like, it could be anyone. It could be any one of you clowns just pasting.
Is that
sandwich
pickled? Is that some pickled
images.
radish on top?
It looks
Yeah.
like it.
That's pickled radish on top.
Yeah.
It looks delicious.
It does look that. It does like maybe put like some marinara on there, like a meatball. I just like meatball sandwiches.
No, that's
I'm
going the
just
wrong
trying
way.
to
Then.
meatball
Making it
sandwich.
Meatball sandwich is good, but
Yeah,
It's a different thing.
and so then I January 2 years ago when we had like Yakuza and Gravity Rush, like there was a lot of stuff to play in January and February. Like it's there's not a whole lot coming out in the next couple months. I know Hitman's coming, but like it's pretty light compared to years past. And so like last year I played Outer Wilds and I played Disco Elysium. I was like, all right, what's the game I'm gonna play in January that I really should have gotten around to and didn't? And I don't play a ton of visual novels, but I have a real soft spot for like 999 and Danganronpa, and a lot of people have been saying like, hey, like especially if you liked like 999 and that series, that like you should play 13 Sentinels. So I was like, all right. But like, I don't, at the end of the day, when I've like worked, washed my kids, like I don't really want to like go into my cold office, even though like the 4K TV is in there. And then if I'm going to be at the TV upstairs, my wife is often watching something or wants to watch something with me on there. I was like, all right, so how the fuck am I going to play 13 Sentinels? And so I had realized for a while, some months back, this company makes a device called Backbone, this is not unique, but this is like one that people really like. It's basically a controller attachment for an iPhone, and so you kind of like pull it out, you slide it into that little connector lightning port, and then it's got an equivalent of a decent Xbox or PlayStation controller, like good feeling buttons, decent feeling analog sticks. And what's unique about Backbone is that it has its own app. So you connect this controller in. There's a little button that glows in the corner that says like, the controller has power. You press that and it automatically jumps to the Backbone app and it pulls in any games that you have downloaded that have controller support. It automatically pulls in the like Xbox and PlayStation remote play apps. And so it's like I just hit that button, it loads into the Backbone app. The remote play thing is there. I hit A to confirm, and all of a sudden, I'm connecting to my PS5 downstairs, sitting on my couch, and I have like this and the iPhone screens are like incredible these days. So it's not as big as a Switch, but I mean like they're beautiful screens to look at, and so I've got fucking 13 Sentinels like running like totally fine on my couch. I can connect my AirPods and listen. Like it's awesome. Like it's super. There's not a world where I would have put 8 hours into this game in the last week, if not the like exact setup of being able to like remote play it to my phone, have like a decent controller, and like be able to sit on my couch and spend time with it. My wife is like deeply unsure what's going on over on the couch. She's like, what? She just hears anime voices like blaring out of my phone, which to my wife is an immediate reason to question anything that's happening in another part of the house. So I know that some people, there's one that Razer makes that I should have pulled up the Razer Keshi or something like that. But anyway, like,
I mean, this sounds incredible. This sounds like it's going to solve a lot of issues for me personally.
It's
I can't wait to check this out.
I think the Backbone is a little pricey. There are like different options you can go in this route, but like the Backbone is like a really high quality controller. It's got its own dedicated app. It just makes like the experience like very. I just take the cover off. It doesn't fit with the cover on my phone, so I have to take that that thing off. And so I take that off, slide it in. It just works seamlessly. Like it's just a really. I will end up playing. It's like exciting because there are games that like I probably don't play because I can't fit them into my life. And if it's like I can fit in 13 Sentinels, there are other games I can probably fit in. Like some games you want on the big TV and experience the spectacle. Yes, 13 Sentinels has gorgeous art that would look even more gorgeous on a bigger TV, but like it's fine. Like I'm okay with it. And I don't have my PS5 connected through Ethernet, so sometimes the connection gets a little wonky. So I'm gonna have to like fix that and run a wire down here so I can do that. But for friends who have gotten like their connection setups ideal, they're like, I had a friend who played like majority of Demon Souls on this, and he said it was like totally fine and wild. Like workable, and the connection was pretty good. I guess on Android, there are other remote play apps that people have made that like you have like better customization settings over like quality and stuff. Like Sony gives you absolutely nothing. Like you can go in, it's like turn remote play on, turn it off. And it's like really frustrating because like on Steam Link, and I've messed with so many of these things in my house because I'm always trying to find ways where it's like, I've got 20 minutes. Like, how could I just play a game instead of like having to be in my ideal office setup? Like Steam Link, you can do like bandwidth priority. So it's like, hey, when the Steam Link is on, like whatever my kid is watching, like on the TV around the corner, like, you know, you can lower the quality. She's not going to notice if that's going to be an issue. Because that's what I want. Is like I would love to be able like to like tell the PlayStation 5, it's like, hey, when you are triggered for remote play, like you are the prime, like that means like you should get bandwidth priority on the network so that like you are getting like everything. They haven't done any of that in like the 8 years they've had that device, or the remote play. So I don't think they're going to do it now. But that's me shouting into the void that I wish there were some more options there. Because like the time I've spent with 13 Sentinels is I love it. I'm really, really enjoying it.
How far in are you now?
I'm 8 hours. I made it past the prologue, and so now like the game is kind of opened up for me to explain. That's
about where I am also, just so we are about the same place in terms of stuff, so we can talk about it. Yeah,
like the general setup of the game, like it really is a game that if it sounds remotely interesting, just go play it, because like a lot of the introductions of a lot of what's happening in the premise is like fun to experience on its own. So again, even if you've made it this far and you think, I'm gonna download and play it, like I don't want to spoil. I'm gonna spoil this right here, but I don't want to spoil it for other people. Want to give them fair warning, so skip ahead a minute or two. But like, you know, like the game opens with like this Japanese student, high school, like very common premise for a lot of these games. But there's no inkling of like sci-fi stuff. It's just he's in high school. He loves watching like some X-Files equivalent. He's just a nerd that likes watching. I like in this world or timeline, I don't know, like UFO Wars is clearly just Star Wars, but they call it other things. Yeah. The game has a very sort of like plays a lot of fun with pop culture that way. But anyway, like that's your introduction, is like kids swapping VHS tapes in high school, and they go outside and they're getting ready to, I don't know, go hang out after school. And I don't know, some weird sort of like one of the characters starts feeling weird, and they look over and they appear to have summoned a mech into the city. Just summoned, like, and it's clear it was their actions. Like they were thinking about a mech and a mech appeared, and there's just off in the distance, like, yo, that's a fucking mech. That's weird. And it only sort of like, sort of escalates from there in different ways. So it's a really fun setup. That starts slow, but the characters I think are like really interesting and endearing, and both well written and well voice acted in the English voice acting, which I've stuck with at least so far. Like I haven't found it to be often, sometimes this time, I mean, it's come a long way, but like sometimes it's the kind of thing where it's like, you know what? I don't, like I'm just gonna switch to Japanese and just move on. But like I've actually liked a lot of the character voice acting in this game, so I've kept that on, and I like all the characters in the world. And once you get past this prologue, you start opening up, and this is where like the 999 part started like kind of tingling, which is you can open up, you'll get to like there's like a carousel of characters, and it's like, hey, you can start picking up some of these different characters, play a little chunk of their story, and you'll hit sort of like a to be continued part. But if you hit square, you can bring up essentially like their timeline, and it's like here are the branching paths. Like when you hit this section of the story, and you can like jump around to the parts that you want to be at. There are 3 different things that could occur here. So it's like you'll do one that seems the most like obvious, like the one that the game is guiding you to, and then it's like, all right, well now jump back and see if you can somehow get a different event to occur. And so it becomes kind of a puzzle game, adventure game, and then tied on top of that is there's a strategy layer. So in a different version of in some other part of the timeline, there are these mechs that are fighting these creatures. And so in between story sections, you are doing this strategy layer, which is like it's like a really basic tower defense game that looks extremely pretty. I've actually just set that combat to easy because I really don't have any interest in.
Yeah, I've thought about it
and engaging with it. So what I asked this to Twitter was like, so in the prologue you can't lose. Like it's meant to sort of like just push you along, and then once you get out of the prologue, you get into fights where you get graded. And if you get S ranks on those fights, you get what are called mystery points. And then if you get mystery points, you can use that to unlock different pieces of lore. And so like everything I heard about this game is the reason to play it is the story. And then the strategy part isn't bad, but it's sort of just, it's fine. And like the story is really the reason you want to be there. And that the combat is kind of a pushover. And a lot of people that aren't even big strategy folks said they were basically S ranking without much effort. Totally. But like for me, it's like kind of sounds like if I could just hit like skip on the combat, I would, and just get back to the story bits. I mean, story stuff happens in the combat, but it just seems like on the priority of what you're getting out of this game, it is really the character interactions and the different timelines and the different story things that can break down. So when you get out of the prologue, the game's like, what do you want to do? You want to set this to easy? I was like, I'm just embracing this. I'm just going to easy. I just want to steamroll through this combat stuff. And so that's where I've landed right now on the game. I have a lot of options on the story, and then eventually
it
like
really opens up. It really opens up post prologue to where you're like, okay, I could pull on any of these threads. Which of these characters is my favorite? Who do I want to see? Who do I think is going to give me something that might connect back to a different character's arc and give me different options? That stuff is all really cool.
It's really non-linear, which like fits within like the sci-fi premise, but then also allows you, like you said, to like, I just really like this character. Like, I want to go see what they do next. And even though I have like 90 different routes I could be doing with different characters, like I want to try and figure out what is this third route that I can't quite figure out. Do I need to come back with different, like, I don't know exactly how all the mechanics like tie or don't tie into each other, but, I'm kind of piecing that together as I go along. But, it's really cool. And, I've heard as enjoyable as like even just the like high concept premise is at this juncture. I've heard that it has like really like how it starts explaining things is like profoundly satisfying. So if I'm liking it this much already, I'm excited to see where the story goes from here.
You're going to end up being the person who probably pulls me through this because it has been so hard for me to find the time and energy to sit down and like commit myself to it.
I finally said I just have to do it. Like it's not a game I can like pick at and just one, there's so much happening in the story that and because it's non-linear, you can often you could spend 90 minutes with a character who at this point does not feel like connected at all to what's going on, or you'll do a do one character story bit and then like the conclusion of that is like jump 100 years into the future and like some weird context of these characters that doesn't make any sense. And so I need to keep the momentum going and try and keep all these story bits in my head so that I don't always have to be like referencing a Wikipedia or something like that. I'm sure that I will come to that point to just keep track of like all of the character names, which is like currently my issue is like you're just meeting so many different people and I can't keep track of everyone at the same time, which is why like I try and exhaust a single route is like do everything I can with this one character to kind of like cement who they are and like what their motivations are and what their situations are. But yeah, like I just needed to, if I'm going to do this, it was either I do 13 Sentinels this month or I'm never going to do it. And so I wanted to do it because it's like a game I looked at and I was like, the way everyone's talking about this, I know I'm going to love it. Like I know I'm really going to enjoy this game. And I play like one or two of these every couple of years. And like, I always really enjoy it. And this one specifically because it's feeling very much like 999, which is not just a good visual novel, like probably one of my favorite games. And I didn't like any of the sequels all that much, but that first game was really special. And I'm getting a lot of those special vibes from this. So I'm excited to play more. It's not short either. It was like, all right, if I'm committing, it's how long to beat was like main route, 31 hours.
Yeah.
Like, okay. And then it was like completionist. It's like 33 hours. Like it's not that much different.
Yeah,
like,
I guess
like,
that's You
totally. Sort of see everything except for like these extra like lore bits that you can get by getting the mystery points. And I'm not going to play it again. So it's like, put it on easy, let me see everything and like do it all at once. And you can also change it in real time. So like if I actually find that it's like it's hurting my enjoyment for it to be easy as it is. You just go into the menu and
bump
flick
it
it
back
over
up.
to
That makes
something.
sense.
Like it doesn't lock you into a difficulty
Is
route,
it-
that way.
Is it fully voiced or just like the there's a couple
No,
words?
it's
it's
fully
fully
voiced.
voiced.
Does it have an
even
English
to the-
track?
Like dialogue, you mean?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Everything is fully voiced, including like the game's sort of like neat, sort of like dialogue tree system. So like the way it works in 13 Sentinels is you have something called the thought cloud, and so when you talk to someone and they say something noteworthy, it gets added to your thought cloud, and so you hit triangle and you have like UFO wars or like last night, like just different little like turns of phrase or titles of things that are related to something that character is keeping track of. And so even in those menus where you there are like two options, you can just have the character elaborate on something that's in the thought cloud, or kind of like the light puzzle element. I mean, it's really just a visual novel. Like there's really the puzzle stuff is like really light. It's like the most of it is like you look in the thought cloud, you'll highlight one of the options, and it will like connect it to the character you're sitting in front of. And all that stuff is fully voiced, and I have found to be really, really effective and charming so far. So yeah, that's like not an issue in the game. But yeah, 13 Sentinels, really, really fucking good, and it only feels like it's getting its legs under me at the moment. So I am really excited to see where some of the kind of WTF moments like connect back. I'm sure it'll all make perfect sense in 20 hours
in
later,
30
Patrick
hours,
Culpix.
yeah, or
in
whatever.
30 hours. But it also, even though it's long, and I want to try and play it like as my primary game for like the next 2 weeks, it is digestible. Like the little bits are short. If you want to sit down, and that's also what's allowed me to do the 8 hours is like, all right, like this week, my daughter somehow finally like kind of like got herself in the circle of neighborhood kids that play like 5 houses down that she's been desperate to be friends with, but hasn't found a way to like sync up with them, and she did. And so I had moments this weekend where like one kid was sleeping and the other kid was like playing in the snow, and it's like, oh, I don't know what to do with. I should do a chore or something. I could sit down and just like relax for 15 minutes, and like I did like a short segment for a character, and like that was cool. So you can kind of do, it's a long game, but there are like kind of digestible levels that you can do even if you don't have 3 hours to sit down with the game.
Totally. All right, let's take a quick break. All right, we are back. Cado, I also saw that you were doing some sci-fi gaming stuff this weekend.
Yeah.
You'd returned to the world of Star Wars, Jedi, Fallen Order.
I don't think any of those colons actually exist, which is great.
Is that not true?
I'm pretty
Wait, what do you
sure.
mean?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure when like
You
official,
mean like on the art.
well, on the art, but also I think when you look it up, does it have it included in the name?
It's only the one. It's only after Jedi. It's Star Wars Jedi,
Fallen Order.
Yeah,
There we go. Okay.
Fallen Order. Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of bounced off this game when it originally came out, because I was not super fresh off of, but still like semi fresh off of Sekiro. And I think I put a lot of expectations and muscle memory from Sekiro into Fallen Order, and just kind of like it didn't feel right. Like they're very differently paced, honestly. But I've been having a bit of like over the break, I was just like having a bit of a Star Wars moment I got because I picked up that miniatures game. Was just like considered like, you know what, I should give that game a try now that I have a little bit of extra time. And
Some people back into Star Wars because of The Mandalorian. Cado back into Star Wars because of this miniature game.
I just mean like more widely than just The Mandalorian. I watched
Yes.
that last season, like, yeah, obviously. But still, I was just like, let me check this out. I wonder what, like, given that I haven't played, I mean, I did play Demon Souls recently, but like it's been long enough that I think maybe the Sekiro muscle memory's gone. And it turns out that I think that game has like I'm enjoying it. I kind of understand what's happening with the mechanics now and like why I was fucking up, but it feels like a lot of the animations, there's flourishes that don't always read as like you're stuck in this animation because it's like lightsaber fighting, you know, where like I assume my hit is done, but it isn't, and I try to like block, or like the way that my brain connects, like, okay, the hit has gone through and like I should be done, I should be able to block, and oftentimes there's like an extra flourish at the end of that is meant to make that attack last longer, meant to make it more dangerous to do, but it doesn't, it like, I don't know what it is about it that never read to me. And so I've finally been getting in tune kind of with what the actual length of attacks are, and I'm having a much better time understanding. And I've also found out that it's I feel like in Demon Souls and Sekiro, depending on like the type of enemy, you can often kind of strike first and stagger smaller enemies a lot of times. And this game definitely plays, or feels like it plays like less of a strike first sort of thing. With most enemies, it's more like you're waiting for a first attack to come in and then parry and react. Almost always, where like, because I play like dex builds in Dark Souls, and obviously Sekiro is just kind of like a Dark Souls game, but a dex build the whole way through. I usually, on like, you know, like the like mobs or whatever, would try to strike first because I know I could like power through small ones as long as there isn't another one coming up behind me or whatever.
Right.
And so that's, you can't really do that as much in Fallen Order, and like kind of realizing that and internalizing that's just like, just wait, just be patient. It's definitely a much more more patient than I usually play these games. So I'm clicking with it. I got through a fight, and it took me a fucking while. It's a boss where you're fighting another
is that the one in the jungle area or whatever? The
Kashyyyk.
Yeah, that's a really cool,
Another
that's a
saber
really
wielding.
cool like area. Is it? Did you do the part where you're up like really high?
Without spoiling. Have you cleared the jungle at this point?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
Yes, there was a
I just remember there was
a big
area.
alien
it was really beautiful.
animal.
Yeah,
that helped out
Yes.
at a point.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're in that spot. Yeah, that's probably my favorite location in the game. Like even like just aesthetically, like it's just a really gorgeous spot. And that fight you're talking about is really fun.
It took me a while, but it was one of those like Dark Souls boss took me a while where like I feel like I'm learning things as I continue on. Where when I had first picked up the game, like the first kind of bumps I like ran into very much felt like something wasn't clicking, but still finally like I recorded it and put it on the internet, because like watching it back, it looks like a fucking amazing lightsaber fight, right? Like on the run that I got through, obviously, like it's almost like a choreographed thing, which is really like it, like watching back is really awesome, and it looks almost it like makes it look effortless, but there was so much time put into it, where just like the anime, like it's another thing about like just learning the animations in this game. There's some that read as attack when there aren't, but I think that's kind of part and parcel with lightsaber duels, right? There are flourishes that are almost meant to be feints and things like that. And I think that's actually like kind of realizing that clicked in my brain. It's like, oh, when I'm doing this fight, that's part of it, is understanding what lightsaber swings from both me and the enemy are flourish and feints versus actual like actually coming towards me. Like that, once that really clicked, it, like, you know, watching that fight back, I'm like, shit, this looks like a fight from the movies. Honestly, like they did a really good job about making all those flourishes and stuff like look right. And it was really fun in the moment, learning what the like different patterns were. And yeah, I ended up like really clicking, and I'm like, you know, making my way through, having some fucking trouble in Dathomir because they switched things up now, but you know.
Are you back? Yeah, you're back in Dathomir now for the second time?
Yeah. Well, I guess.
Or I guess, right, that's the thing, right? I think I went to
Depends.
Dathomir way too early in that
Same.
game and did a lot of that area and then hit a hard...
Did you get the thing?
block.
Did you get the thing early?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I got that thing
and
early. I
then-
was like, what the fuck? With this.
Yeah, and then... But then you just can't progress further.
Right. There's a hard block,
Right,
which
yeah.
this game does often, right? It's the like kind of Metroid, like the Metroid style, like you need an upgrade to get through
Yeah.
this door situation. Which is
Except for
part
like the worst map ever made in a video game.
Oh, it's so
Oh my
rough.
god, the map in this game
That
is
map sucks.
atrocious.
It's so
I
bad.
spend minutes
Yeah.
at a
This is
time
funny.
just rotating the map to try to figure out what is on one level and what is on
Oh
another
my
level.
god.
I think navigating through the map, like if you're looking for something far away, sucks. But honestly, the map has saved me a couple times where I like looking at the scenery. I'm like, I'm not exactly sure what the next path is, and I open it. And there's that little orange spot or whatever where it's like you haven't explored in this direction, and that
Part's
that
fine.
bit of the map is very helpful.
It's a Metroid game in which like the completionist part is like deeply frustrating. I mean, you know, we did all this when the game came out, but like it's lack of like, you know, real concrete like fast travel to a lot of areas where like there. I remember there's an area in like the winter, you know, the winter planet
there's
where
2 ice levels, but the ice level that goes deep, they're both...
it goes deep underground.
It goes
there's
deep
like
underground. It's an Imperial facility that goes deep underground on
Right.
an ice level, basically.
And I remember I was like, I was enjoying Fallen Order enough that I was like, I would like to sweep through and try and collect everything. It seems like reasonable to accomplish and like not like a huge burden. And I want to spend more time in this world. And it was just like, okay, so I can't fast travel to that area. It's going to it would take me between figuring out the map or like following a video. It'd take me like half an hour to get there. No, like just like let it go and just move on. That's the kind of stuff that I'm so curious where they put the emphasis on in the sequel, like which levers of that game they pull in different directions, because it's a game that I've thought less of the more distance I've had from it, even though I really enjoyed my time with it when it was out. But I am like really, I think it's a game that like could take a huge leap in
Totally.
a sequel, like perhaps investing in a charismatic character that has any like interesting attributes like whatsoever.
There are interesting characters in that game. You
There
get
are.
one on your crew towards the end of that game. You're like, where was this character the whole fucking time?
Please
and so-
just find some excuse to sideline him and make him a side character, or let me play as
Please.
2 Jedi or something.
Please.
Just don't
I'm
bring him
begging
back.
you. He's very dry. Yeah, I don't know. Let us know when you wrap it up.
Yeah, will do. Yeah, I definitely am not. I'm already like noticing like where like a little bit like, oh, when I get an upgrade, I could technically come back here, and then like making the way back to the ship every time has always been like I'm never going back there. I'm never gonna make it
Yeah.
back
Because you're gonna
there.
get a poncho. You're gonna get a poncho. You're
Right,
gonna
that's
get,
the
like,
other
a
thing.
slightly
That's the other
different-
thing.
Yeah, like
There's very few like solid upgrade. Like there are technically upgrades you can find in like hidden places, but it does feel like they've purposefully put those not that far out of the way. Like the sort of thing you're gonna have to backtrack for is mostly like cosmetic stuff for your poncho, your BD1 colors, your ship colors, and lightsaber parts, which are cool. But I don't know that I want to like spend 20 minutes backtracking through a level that just to get those. But yeah.
Okay, we should maybe take a dip in the question bucket, because it's been forever since we have, and people have been sending stuff in, and because I haven't played anything, and that's on me. That's not true. I've probably like played something, but nothing worth talking about. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't even talk about like the 70 minutes I put into Darkest Dungeon last week. I don't have anything new to say about a game that's been out in some form or another since 2014. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
So if you have questions, you can send them to gaming@vice.com. Make sure to use the subject question, otherwise it gets lost in junk mail that comes into that address at this point. This first one is not a correction really, but a little bit of a correction. But maybe a clarification to something we asked last time. So that Monster Hunter Rise demo came out, and Cado was surprised that there were non-wyvern monsters in Monster Hunter. And Chris clarifies why we might think that, which is by saying, this will be pedantic, but hopefully not annoying. In the last episode, Cado mentioned all the classifications in Monster Hunter being X-wyvern, bird wyvern, flying wyvern, etc. And this is partially true, but something that makes Monster Hunter as a franchise stand out to me is the level of detail the devs go to make sure that the skeleton structures for each animal are grouped in a proper taxonomical structure. There are bird wyverns, which are largely the smaller velociraptor-esque animals that have bone structures that birds evolved from. The flying wyverns are expected to be traditional dragons, but not all of them are. Kezu, Diablos, Gravios are flying wyverns that don't make use of their wing bone structure to actually fly, at least in sustained or in flights. The other wyvern classifications are Piscine, Brute, Fanged, and Snake. Not in World, but coming back in Rise are the I think Terrans, which are well worth a look at because they have some wild and diverse monsters in the class, even if there aren't many yet. In the same vein are the crabs, which are the Carapaceans. Yeah, sure. Something not in the world and coming back with Leviathans, which sit on 4 legs close to the ground, but the skeletal structure never played nice with the terrain in world, so they had to get sidelined, unfortunately. Fanged beasts and elder dragons are the final classes that aren't wyverns. Fanged beasts being the bear Arzuros that you can find wandering around early in the demo in Rise, and a few others with that exact skeleton and a smattering of monkeys. That was a lot deeper of a dive than I intended in the email. So sorry for that. I personally think that it's an incredibly attention to detail by the Monster Hunter team to think of a monster and then actually consider its taxonomy, to consider how it would be built physically and ecologically in the setting. And it doesn't matter one iota when you're playing the game. To give this email a point beyond light pedantry, what are some of your favorite incredibly small details in games? I feel like you gave us what we needed, Chris. I think answering that question for us helps a lot. Did either of you end up playing that demo? I know both of y'all have been Monster Hunter people before.
No,
yeah.
Gita, I'm not asking you because you've never told me you've liked or been interested in trying to learn a Monster Hunter. Otherwise, I would have included you in the Monster Hunter Rise question.
No, I haven't played it yet. I mean, when is it? It probably turns off at some point, right?
Yeah, I think it's like early February, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, I
That
should. I don't know. I have a. It's so close that it's one of the things where like I'm more interested in just like watching the reactions, or as Dawson, I think you and I said privately, it was like, let's just keep watching people make these weapon videos so that you and I can watch these weapon videos and then figure out which direction we go in when the game comes out in March. So I'm really excited to play it. I kind of had forgotten when Cado pointed out how close it was. I was like, that's a 2021 game, and thought, like May, June, that felt summerish. So the fact that it's March is cool and exciting.
I played the demo, and it was fun jumping back into Charge Blade because I haven't in a moment.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Charge Blade. I think in general, there's muscle memory is an amazing thing, but something about Charge Blade is always like it was very funny. Each time I encountered the monster, I feel like I remembered another mechanic for Charge Blade. It was like learning a bike but falling down like 3 times and then finally at the end getting it. Yeah, I still love it though. Like now that I feel like I've gotten back into it, the amount of things is actually definitely why I ended up kind of sitting there, just like the decision tree becoming ever more expanding as to like where you're putting your power to like get maximized DPS is that just like hits the right areas of my brain. So totally. Yeah, I think the new movement mechanics are really nice. Being able to kind of just zip around or zip away when you need to with the wire bugs was neat. Gonna be hard to remember to do that because it's not baked in yet to my brain.
Yeah.
Definitely took some hits where I could have escaped, but I'm interested in when that full game comes out.
I'm now like, do I want to play that when it launches or wait for the PC release? Because that's coming later this year also. And
wait, a PC
I should just play
release?
this. Yeah, there's a
It was
PC
part. It was
release
part of
coming.
the Capcom hack. Was that it was listed as coming.
Uh-huh.
Coming. But
Shit.
I'm not gonna be able to wait. And also,
Yeah,
like,
you're probably right.
it looks
like,
good,
good.
gorgeous.
It looks really
like it's clear they like does. It's not if they were to have ported
Right.
Monster Hunter World to the Switch, there would have been compromises made where it would have looked all right. But that is a game engineered for consoles. And so I'm glad that it'll look gorgeous on Switch, and then who knows, like, man, Switch Pro, like that that could happen. Like would it
March
be shocking
31st.
would it
Yeah.
be shocking if like they tied like a big release like Monster Hunter like to a new machine? It was like, yo, you want that 4K or whatever, like that would not shock me whatsoever if that happened sometime in March or April. So you might get your in between if we get lucky.
We a couple of months ago, I guess last month, Gita and I asked the world a question, which was, why do you romance Blackwall in Dragon Age Inquisition?
Oh my god.
And we got a lot of responses, but I'm only going to read one. Thank you to everyone who wrote in the various endorsements. We got some fan art. We got a lot. This is the one that I'm going to read. This one comes in from Sputnik, who writes, here's my take. I was at a wedding sometime around 2015, 2016, and ended up talking to another guest about Dragon Age Inquisition. She asked who I'd romance, and when I said Blackwall, she immediately replied, "Who hurt you?" I asked her who she'd romance, and she said Solus twice. So I asked, who hurt
Oh my
you?
god.
The groom asked what was... The groom asked what was going on and who these characters were, and the simplest way I could think to explain it was something like, Solus is who you romance if you want a man to tell you you're not good enough for him. Blackwall is who you romance if you want a man to tell you he's not good enough for you. Blackwall's appeal, I think, lies in the tragedy of his story. His relationship with the Inquisitor shows him that he cannot outrun his guilt. Power over his power over his fate is ultimately in your hands, which is a very potent romance trope. And if you want a sad or at least bittersweet arc for your Inquisitor, he's your guy. His outsider/criminal background also makes him a especially good match for a dwarf or culinary character who have more limited romance options. And he's generally a pretty down-to-earth guy who wants to help the common people when he's not busy angsting about his terrible past. In the fandom, we used to call him the Trash Bear. He's big, hairy, and you find him in the woods, and he's garbage. I love him. Thank you for all you do. Look for the podcast every week. Thank you, Sputnik. That's a good answer. I retract my anti-Blackwall sentiment. We got enough people writing in explaining why they love him so much. I think I get it now a little bit more. We also got this one in from Shayna, who says the subject line is, Blackwall is a big sub and I love it. If you flirt with Blackwall and are mean to him in your first interaction at Haven, you get approval from him. That's all. Thanks.
Okay,
Shayna.
yeah, I understand this. This makes sense to me.
This now it all adds up. It all adds up. I was gonna wait for Rob to be here, but I kind of feel like maybe we shouldn't. This one comes in from
I
Aaron.
always will encourage that course of action.
Okay,
So
good.
continue.
So I was playing Pokemon Fire Red for the first time since I was a child, and early in my Pokemon adventure, I ran into an intriguing trainer, a certain mountain man by the name of Hiker Knob. If you Google the big guy, you'll see that he's got this certain aesthetic in the face area. My first thought when I encountered this man was, is that Rob Zachney? So let's get an image here.
Oh my
I would love
god.
to see an image.
Oh
I would
my
love to see an
God.
image.
No,
Underneath
I know, like a
the
sandwich
pond.
with
The one,
noodles
yes,
and-
that's Rob Zachney. That's Rob
Is
Zachney.
that Rob Zachney? Is he on a 10-mile
Rob
walk
Zachney's
at
music.
3 in the afternoon? Is that Rob Zachney?
That's Rob Zachney.
When Rob
for sure.
talks about how he goes for walks, this is pretty close to what I actually imagine. Like, he's got
The
a
big
walking
back-
stick. He doesn't need it, but like it's
Yeah.
part of the aesthetic, and so Rob brings it anyway.
Is the sinister grin part of what you imagine as well?
Well, he talks about going on walks like late at night, so maybe
Yeah,
he's doing that
fair
to scare some strange characters off. Rob is Rob's just
the
going a couple of
strategy.
blocks to go a mile, and you got to make sure that you're prepared.
We should
there.
know we are
You
really
look
looking
like a
at.
cursed golem. to
We
make
are
sure no one mice you.
We are specifically looking at the fire red, leaf green version of this hiker character. There's a bunch of other ones. I'm not saying Rob is
Hiker's
not
one of
like
those.
these other ones, but
Yeah.
there's overlap to some degree, but especially this one from fire red, leaf green, the discerning eyes, the specific facial hair construction.
Yeah.
It's Rob.
100%.
That's Rob's acne.
100%. Yeah, there's
They
been
owe
hikers.
Rob royalties.
There's been hikers since the original red and blue, so specifically fire red, leaf green is the one. Also, this one, Generation 4, though, also is pretty good.
You
This is
got it,
hold on, yeah,
post.
hold on, I'm getting there. It's
Okay,
got
I'm waiting.
a contemplative Rob.
This is
That's-
Rob when you ask him about the mentalist.
Yeah. He's thinking through something.
So what I
there
want
a
to,
little
what
bit.
I like, so this version of Rob is Rob what he thinks he is when he's out, and then the original Rob who's scowling at you is who Rob is when he's
Right.
actually out. So we're just seeing the
The first
difference
one is
between the
Rob. The second one is Rob the before of the Busset challenge, and the second one is Rob after.
God, shut up. Sad. Incredible. All right. That's for us. Waz writes in and asks, what is your favorite internet created fiction? I recently discovered Mystery Flesh Pit National Park and have spent over an hour reading up on what can only be described as a well-made B-movie tier background body horror as a landscape. The person behind it even had a large detailed cutaway diagrams made like you would find in the DK series of educational books. That's a nightmare. I'm going to link this. This is truly some
immediately Googled
scary.
that.
I don't want to go to the Mystery Flesh Pit National Park.
I've been thinking
that's
about
great.
this specific kind of thing so much. I have several answers for this question. If
The
this email is not
WPA
concluded,
style
please
on this
continue.
poster is so good.
It's pretty good.
Hey,
amazing.
Remedy.
Oh my god, yeah, right?
Need someone for control.
God,
Dude,
the
get
WE
control.
right here.
Remedy literally is hiring a writer, and they should look out to this. Not that I looked at who's
Oh
whether or
my
not they're
god, there's
hiring
so
writers or not.
many. This page
a lot
keeps
here.
going.
Yeah, this is really
Vita, if you are listening right now, go to mysteryfleshpit.tumblr.com.
I would love a control level that takes place out in a national
Wow.
park. That's
Wouldn't that
creepy.
be great? National parks are so great. Oh, the COVID relief bill added a new national park. Anyway, that's nice.
Look at this image. Breaking news:
sorry.
disaster at Living National Park. Restraints fail as massive underground creature swallows hundreds of park goers.
Restraints.
David and I have been watching these documentaries on Disney Plus about the national parks, and there's one. Okay, so the one that is alludes to the ongoing climate problems the most is the one about the Everglades, because they keep talking about all of the boa constrictors that have been released into the park that are just breeding with each other at a rate that is unstoppable and
my
killing
God.
everything else in the Everglades.
Jesus.
Yeah.
There is
dangerous.
there's a massive snake problem in the Everglades. This reminds me of that because, like, apparently all scientists that talk about conservation of the Everglades are like, we literally don't know how to stop these snakes
There's
from
too many
taking
of
over
these snakes.
everything. Yeah.
God, I'm just going to read the question part of this presumably fictional question and answer. While the park was still open, has anyone ever tried to eat the parts of the mystery flesh creature? I know they drink the fluid stuff, but what about the meat parts? Extremely
I know
good
they
question.
drink the fluid stuff. It just says a whole lot to me.
Obviously, they. Everyone knows that.
Okay.
But
So over
anyone taken
Halloween,
a
so my
straw?
answer for what is like this out in the world that I really, really like is actually Michael Lutz wrote this incredibly funny and very, very good series of scary Halloween stories that take place in two rival like Midwestern towns. That and the one I really, really like is called Unwinder, and because it's written in the style of like a Yelp review. So if you look if you read it from the bottom up, you get everything that happens in sequence, but if you read it from the top down, you just get increased, like you see everything like sorted by like how it would look on a page on the internet, and it's like a very, very good way of revealing a mystery using the internet as a form. And also it's very, very funny because it's all about hedge mages and people that are reviewing hedge mazes that are eating people. Like that.
It's
and like,
extremely good.
yeah. And Dulcinea House, has everyone heard of that?
No.
It's a series of like scary creepypasta like short stories, but part of it also takes place in like live journal comments. It's a series of interconnected live journals, and it's all about this house that eats people, like a Dulcinea flower or any of the the carnivore flowers that exist, like pitcher plants and all that stuff. It's pretty good. It's like an also ran House of Leaves. Michael Lutz also described House of Leaves as the first creepypasta, so I feel like it all fits in.
I think that was an interesting aside. I'm mad at, on the most recent Game Study Buddies, Michael Lutz talked about, like, gestured at his reading of House of Leaves and then didn't give it, and that's unconscionable. If you say you have a specific idiosyncratic read on, like, that style of crossover kind of horror fiction, I need to know. Because, like, that was one of those books that, like, dominated, like, high school conversations and early college conversations because everyone had an opinion about it, whether they liked it or not. I badly wish that Michael had shared that. Anyone else have any, like, internet fiction thing that means a lot to them? Or that they liked a lot?
Yeah, I can't really come... I mean...
So much of this dominated my college era, and it's just like I can't just pull a lot of stuff.
The closest I can come to, which is sort of a cop out though, is the Blair Witch Project is probably my favorite horror film of all time. It's like the one I still think about and messes me up if I like spend too much. It's deeply contributed to my like never wanting to go camping. So we'll have to see where my kids go in that direction if I'm forced to confront my fears. But like the Blair Witch Project essentially by accident like invented like a lot of like the modern sort of like ARG and like sort of like tangential web marketing where when the Blair Witch Project came out, like, part of the whole pitch of that, which seems quaint now, but like wasn't when that movie came out, was like, oh, it's real. Like they found these tapes and it's real, and they made a full-on documentary that aired on Sci-Fi along with it. They made elaborate websites that filled out all sorts of background information about like the history of the Blair Witch and like that part of the country, and like I was like so far into it to the point where like I at the age I was at like was semi convinced that like maybe like it doesn't make sense that like they would just like let you pay money to go watch like these kids probably die in the woods, but man, look at all this shit they made for it. And I was like in middle school at the time, so like I was like at the age where like that stuff could especially when it wasn't like so far like had been done a million times, it was clearly just part of like the marketing playbook. So I have watched that documentary on Sci-Fi. It's like on the Blu-ray and I think it's on YouTube too. It's really well put together, and like that was like probably the closest that I've come to like going down that kind of rabbit hole, was like really just getting deep into the lore and fiction of all that and how it extended onto the internet itself.
I have like a few answers, but really it's sort of like two category answers. One is like the sort of limited run webcomic that I have forgotten most of at this point. Of which there were a bunch where it was like, oh yeah, I was really into that one cyberpunk webcomic, not like an ongoing webcomic, like a webcomic that's like released on the web for a year and then it wraps. And so like that's like a type of thing. And the one that comes to mind that I do know the title of, ironically, is called Sin Titulo, which means without title, which is kind of this Lynchian thing that I recently bought in hardcover because it was eventually released as like a thing you could buy, but like it's completely gone from the internet at this point. It doesn't like I don't think you can find it. Maybe you can archive.org your way through it, whatever Wayback Machine your way through it. But I remember really loving it and it really shaping some aesthetic sense stuff. It was very much pulling again on some David Lynch, particular versions of horror, anxiety, the real world broken just a little bit. So that's one thing. The other thing is a particular type of Let's Play that I think has not fully disappeared, but been overshadowed by the video Let's Play. And that's text-based Let's Plays, like the Dwarf Fortress Boat Murdered playthrough, which was a kind of community driven, something awful let's play of Dwarf Fortress where everyone got a year to play. I think it was a year of game time, not real time, of game time to play, and then had to hand the save off to someone else, and the next person picked it up and would go from there. The other big one and both of these are on the Let's Play archive, which is lparchive.org, is the thing that got me into, why am I blanking on the name of this game that I absolutely adore? Oh, this is very bad.
Oh no.
6 Ages is like the spiritual successor / sequel to it. King of Dragon Pass. There's a King of Dragon Pass Let's Play on LP Archive by Mystic Mongol that is extremely good, or was extremely good. Here's the other thing. It's like, I'm talking about this stuff as if I've read it recently. I have not read this stuff in a decade plus. Who knows if it's fucking terrible or gross or whatever, right? But the King of Dragon Pass Let's Play, the text-based Let's Play for it, was like 506 updates long, right? And so it's like literally the sort of thing where you could just settle in, you got depression, you got a blanket, let's go. I'm going to hit next page. I'm going to read about...
Been there, done that.
I'm going to just read about what is going on. And for people who don't know how these kind of text-based Let's Plays went, especially for something like King of Dragon Pass, there was a lot of like, okay, what should we do? You know? And the forum would be voting on what action to do. And so you'd get this sort of like, you would get the sense not only of what the events were of the game, but also the sense of like what the forum like culture was and what people wanted. On top of that, there'd be fan art that you'd be able to look at. I was not even on Something Awful. I was just like reading their LP form basically because of being a fucking nerd. And yeah, like that was definitely a big part of web-based narratives because so much of being a text-based LP meant bringing your own stuff to it. I think it's especially true for all the Dwarf Fortress Let's Plays, which all have all generate a lot of creativity based on like how the events are interpreted or translated into new things. Brave Mule, which is a friend of the site, Kevin Snow's like company name is if you go to bravemule.com, you can also pick up or read Matul Remit, which is another Dwarf Fortress Let's Play story that includes a bunch of really sick fan art all the way through it. And like it's a really fun way to read or get into something like Dwarf Fortress without actually playing Dwarf Fortress. So those are my recommendations. Cado?
I mean,
yeah, what's it gonna be? You just gotta have to say it, right?
I have to say it's Homestuck.
Oh my god.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, which is I haven't even finished Homestuck, you know? There was a time where
really?
There was a time.
I thought you had finished it. Had you not finished it?
There's like I believe essentially I'm missing the last like 8th by like page view, because there was a break of like a year almost. I want to say where like they were just not updating.
Is an 8th a lot of it? An 8th is probably a lot, huh?
What's the fucking it's a lot. The thing is huge. Yeah. It's huge. I was lucky to like learn of it when it was in like the first like I think it was second or third chapter, like early on. Even also the chapters are fucking huge too, though. There's like 8 of them, I think technically. Anyways, yeah. I don't think you can even reread Homestuck all the way right now.
Wait, really?
I think some of the pages have been broken, which is a fucking shame.
Because of Flash? Because of
multiple things. So at one point, like basically the IP rights were sold to, I forget who technically owns Homestuck right now, because they printed them, which is also like I still don't know
Viz.
how that.
I think it was Viz.
Viz,
I feel like
right?
Viz got it.
Essentially, whoever got it didn't do a good job upkeeping some of the web pages, which is a damn shame, because like that was kind of the beautiful thing about Homestuck, was that for certain parts of it, it definitely could only exist online, which is, I don't understand what they did with the printed books. Because there's there are pages in Homestuck that are just like little mini Flash games, honestly. I think some of that might have been ported to something else, HTML5, but at least at the beginning, there was a lot of there's also fourth wall breaking shit where normally the page is it's got all the here's your web page and navigation bar and stuff, and then there's an image and some text under it usually, and there would be plenty of times when the content itself would break out of its normal bounds of just the image and the text box to infect other parts of the website. I think a lot of those sort of tricks have been kind of broken or not upkept well, as far as I've heard, but I think...
But it's important to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's just as far as media I've read on the internet, it's definitely the one that, I mean, partially just because of the size and the fact that I have all this fucking useless knowledge in my brain, right? It's taken up such a long part of my life that I couldn't even think of a different thing that was in the similar vein of as far as internet fiction that wasn't specifically an ARG. Because I did play a couple ARGs back in the day when those were still things that movies big, when there was the ARG for The Dark Knight when that came out, or the ARG for Tron. What's the name of that Tron movie?
Was it Legacy?
Biodigital
right?
Jazz, man. Yeah, I think so. Tron.
How you doing? You doing okay?
Legacy.
Yes.
But yeah, I really, I don't know where or how much of it is broken, or whether or not it still reads well, because I literally haven't looked at it. It's 8,000 pages. God damn. So I'm off by 1,000 pages, I'm pretty sure. That's the other thing, is it's so long, and the fucking the acts and quote unquote chapter structure is not regular. There's acts within acts where a tangent is made, and then it splits off into act 2, act 3, or shit like that. So it was kind of at a certain point impossible to go back, and it was well, at some point I'll just reread it, which may or may not be coming soon, depending. Actually,
shout outs to the Range Touch Patreon if they hit 1,025, 1025. Is that
1025?
Yeah, 1025. They're gonna do.
Is that a Homestuck number? Is that what that is?
Cado, you'd know better than me.
No, I don't think so. 412 is or 413 is the thing normally. Is
the Homestuck, the MS Paint Adventures Wiki says 1025 is the third significant number to make an appearance in Homestuck. The third. Adding 413 to 612.
Oh, of course. Okay.
Oh.
And that's symbolic of the interconnection between the Kids and the Trolls sessions, as well as the Green Sun, of course. Obviously.
Oh, yeah, that totally makes sense.
Uh-huh.
Anyway,
that's the thing. That's over at I had 413 in there, but these other two numbers I've totally forgotten about at this point, because this thing is so fucking huge.
Yeah. Our friends over at Range Touch are doing a drive to 1025 Patreon push, and if they hit 1025, they're going to start doing a Patreon, or not a Patreon. I guess a free listen through all of. Or not listen through, but a walk through all of Homestuck podcast, in which one of the members, Michael Lutz, who wrote about Homestuck for us years ago now, will be explaining and exploring Homestuck with Cameron Kunzelman, who, of course, also often wrote for us. Obviously, that is not the only Homestuck podcast out there. I'm now considering listening to Let Me Tell You About Homestuck, which is by some other friends, and I can't fall into the hole of Homestuck podcasts, but what if I did?
What if you did? I said that both genuinely and unironically between the years 2009 and 2012.
What if I got into Homestuck, I never did, so I probably will not.
2021 is the year of Homestuck.
God, miserable.
Reject.
Patrick, if you want to understand homesick, imagine how anime culture just like huffed its own farts and then came out and emerged as something entirely new, like a concentrated form of its evil.
Oh my god, brutal.
Yeah. Homesick culture was something else.
Homestuck culture was a lot. Homestuck con culture was a lot.
Oh boy.
Here is let's go through one more question here. I think this is going to be a pretty easy one for most of us. Alex writes in and says, "Hey friends, has a video game ever moved you to tears? I don't think this has happened to me personally, but if it has for you, I want to play the game that did it. I had this thought after ugly crying to the manga Sunny. I found crying to be cathartic lately. Let me know if you have any suggestions." Dog, what game hasn't made me cry? I'm a fucking crybaby. I'll cry.
I
at
am
anything.
too, but video games don't do it for me. And there's something about the medium where it's never, and like this is even after like after my dad passed and then I had kids, where it's just like, oh shit, like Hallmark
the floodgates
commercials
open.
fuck me up.
I
got close like when like Papa EO came out like at the same time my dad died, and it was just like my dad was not a alcoholic and I had a good relationship with him, so like I wasn't like completely vibing, but like it was still like a story about that right after, and it was like that whole game's bit is about like saying goodbye, and so that got me close, but I don't even really give that credit because it was just like such a unique time and space. But there's something about the medium of games where I've just never, I can get close. Like a couple times games have like teared me up, but I've like, whereas like a movie, TV, books, like those can do it to me, but I don't know, video games, I just have trouble connecting. I don't know if it's the controller or what it is, but it's
for me, Patrick, it's definitely like the presence of a controller.
I have played Undertale and I thought it was sad, but it didn't make me cry. Sorry, Gita,
for me, Patrick, it's definitely the presence of a controller that keeps me from crying. I could emotionally connect to games very, very intensely. And like, I mean, obviously by the way that I talk about them on this podcast. But I'm always, you always have like one foot in the door to see if you're going to get a prompt to do something with your hands. And that always keeps me from bridging that emotional gap. I think I've come close in some like very, very long Japanese RPGs where I like know that I'm going to be saying goodbye to characters.
Right,
I think that like meta narrative in my brain where it's like, this is about to be over can sometimes, like the end of Persona 3. Yeah, for sure. Tears in my eyes because I spent like over 100 hours with those characters and now this narrative is over. But I don't think I've cried at a character death. I don't think I've cried a happiness or sadness because of a video game. I'm racking my brain, but I know I've felt really intense emotions because of games, but I haven't actually had like I've movies send me into fucking commercials send me into fits of sobbing at this point.
Okay, wait. So I just only have to put it to be like, all right, Patrick, before you say this has never happened to you, you should Google, did you write an article where you maybe use that in a headline? I was like, double check myself. And so I did.
Yes.
I didn't say make me cry, but I wrote that dragon cancer knocked me on my ass. Which
I almost raised that, but felt like I'd be an asshole if I did. I was like, really, Patrick? Not even that dragon cancer?
Why? So that dragon cancer, it's, spoiler from 2016, or, is a game about a family that I believe loses their child to cancer, and the kid is very young. That's before I had a kid, but it was at the stage that my wife would have been pregnant. But again, that's also, I guess, like, games are like intimately about like some, like I almost don't count that either. Cause like, okay, like my wife pregnant, I'm expecting my first kid and I'm watching, like I'm playing a video game, an interactive piece of media about like, oh, in 8 months, like I'll say goodbye to this kid after welcoming them into the world. Like I think the kind of like the premise of the question is more about like as Gita is saying, like when like a big character death happens, it is meant to be sad and emotional. Yeah. Does that get you? And like that's the thing that hasn't happened to me. Like clearly here, a game made me cry, and I could probably find other instances that are like in that world, that kind of like world, but like just like standard, where like put this story in a movie or a TV show and it would get me. It just like doesn't do it in a game, and I'm not entirely sure why.
That stuff doesn't tend to get me.
A game give me a PTSD trigger or something, or like trigger an emotion that is related to like my normal life, for sure. But I haven't been so deep in the game world that I've been driven to tears. And I think it's easier for me to have that suspension of disbelief when I'm not also being asked to interact with this object, right? I cry in front of paintings all the time. I love to cry in museums, but I'm not asked to then to like hit a quick time command, to continue going to a museum. They didn't ask me for that at the Met. No, when you go to their timed entry, they don't ask you to hit a quick time command.
For me, it ends up being a lot of what Gita mentioned around like wrapping big games up. If it's something I've had a really good time with, that sort of stuff, and also anything in that final 10th of the game in which someone does die or something, that there's such a leg up versus a mid-game surprise death or something, which very rarely moves me because I'm not already in that like compromised mode. But what ends up getting me is also moments of like Outer Wilds, the last 30 minutes or whatever, the kind of finale of Outer Wilds, I cried all the way through because it was just so overwhelming emotionally. There were moments, I've talked about this before, but like playing Breath of the Wild where like, am I crying? Like I'm having a good time. Why am I crying? What is happening to me? So like that stuff actually hits me a lot more. Or then I would say like, and this has been a bad year for it because I just haven't played a lot of things that moved me in that particular, I guess like Kentucky Route Zero's final act also. Kentucky Route Zero I cried through multiple times. Like there are multiple points in Kentucky Route Zero where it isn't the big dramatic like, oh no, the character's falling. Like that's not how character death is handled in that game. It's so much more contemplative. And like if you can get me into that mode, into that contemplative mode where I'm thinking about what a character means and like what they mean to other people, if I'm thinking about themes and the ways in which a group of people have worked towards something only to have it fall apart or to succeed at it, like that's the point at which you're going to get me. It's rarely that sort of like cheap twist someone is suddenly lost from you, and much more that like you've eased me into a reflective space already, and at that point fucking let me just sob it out, honestly. Let's go. I don't mind. So yeah. Cado, how about you?
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely that sort of like, it has to do the work to get there, and the work is often more character work than like your average game will do almost. Or like, yeah, like that, like examples that work include obviously Undertale for me is a big one. It's just like by the end of that game and like the kind of the all of the work that it has like put into what all those characters are doing and mean and like who they are. Like it does the work to get you there in a way, and it's like not even, well, I mean, I still don't want to spoil Undertale. Go play Undertale if you haven't played Undertale yet. But anyways, yeah, it's mostly like, it's never about like X character is gone now. It's like the game will have to have done the narrative like kind of the narrative work to really set up the not just like who that character is, but also what they mean specifically to the other characters around them, right? Like it's kind of almost, it's got to be both things of like empathizing with the people who have lost someone and also like mourning the character's loss itself. But like that's so, it's very rare in games that they've like gone that far, I feel like, just because of the nature of most like mainstream stuff. But
yeah, I can think like Yakuza 0 is one where like the character work is good enough that it gets me by the end. Stuff like that where like that is quote unquote mainstream, but it's doing the same type of thing that like Undertale does, which is just like investing you, letting you spend time with characters in a way that is not just about forward progress. And I think that makes a lot of difference, you know?
I feel like we've all interacted with enough fiction that character beats are not enough to get us to sort of feel outside of our own heads and feel outside of our own bodies in the way that is necessary to get you to reach those sort of like instinctual natural emotions. I was thinking so much about you crying at the end of Outer Wilds and thinking about how that's getting you outside of your own body by making you think about the universe and like the nature of the universe. And that is like an experience of awe. I experience awe, I think, very easily when it comes to movies and pieces of art, paintings in particular. But video games, I feel like I need to feel so instinctually connected to a video game that it's like such a huge and high compliment for me to say a game made me experience that. But I'm just always so conscious of the controller and the controls.
Yeah. That's tough.
Oh my God, Ella, what do you want?
All right. On that note, I think we're going to wrap up. Thank you to everyone who's sending questions. We still have a bunch more to go through over the course of the kind of slow period here. Also, thank you people who are sending in unique episode ideas. I'm going to collect those up and share them with everybody, and maybe we'll do a couple of those. Ooh. So look forward to those. Hopefully also. You can find me on Twitter at Austin_Walker. You can find the show at twitter.com/Waypoint. Where can people find you, Gita?
You can find me at XOXOGossipGita.
Cado.
At A_Cado_appears.
And Patrick.
At Patrick Klubik.
We'll be back later this week. As always, thank you to Bowen for letting us use the track Miss You off the EP Pale Machine. Find out more about that at waypoint.zone/BOEN. As always, fuck capitalism. Go home. Stay safe this week, y'all. We'll talk to you in a few days. Peace.